I don't know how to start this review. There's just so many places I can go. But the first thing I do want to say is this is a completely 100% spoiler free review. Everything that I will talk about and everything that you'll see back here is completely spoiler free. If there is, please let me know and I'll be happy to fix it. I apologize, but I pretty much checked it and I think we're okay. So let's go. So, welcome to A Game for Your Thoughts. Today we're talking about Death Stranding. I will start this off with saying this game is certainly not for everyone. It is a very slow game, and if this deters you and you have no interest in the gameplay, you've seen other reviews or gameplay videos, and you're just like, this looks so boring, but the story and the world interests you, I highly encourage you to go out and see if you can find someone who's cut together all the cutscenes and the story pieces to make it kind of like a movie, because the story this game tells is phenomenal, and I think everyone should experience at least the story. So, Death Stranding is the first game by Hideo Kojima from his Kojima Productions studio, and this game did not disappoint me at all. This game was phenomenal. I loved it every minute from start to finish. There was so much I loved about this game, and I cannot wait to talk about it and share it with you guys because this game was amazing. So I'm going to talk about the story first, but yet again I want to emphasize this is spoiler free. I'm going to talk about a lot, but I'm going to do very, very much to make sure there's no spoilers here. So you have nothing to worry about spoilers wise. I'll have a whole big spoiler video coming up later on, so don't worry about spoilers here. You're good. Trying to pull together a basic synopsis without like ruining things or trying to find the best way to describe it in such a short amount of time was really hard to do. The world that Hideo Kojima has built here is very incredible, and it is a very interesting lore and story going on. And so trying to find a great way to explain it's pretty tricky, but I'll do my best. So there was this event called the Death Stranding, and it caused the worlds of the living and the dead to kind of get mixed up. And now there are these creatures called BTs roaming the world, and they're kind of like ghosts, but like they're kind of like weirdly in between life and death. It's kind of weird. But anyways, so there's these BTs around the world, and they're causing all these problems. These void outs that are like huge explosions, and then also this thing called timefall, which is rain that advances time on anything it touches. With all this going on, America and the surrounding countries have really fallen apart. And so you play as Sam Bridges as he journeys across America trying to reconnect the world and bring back society. So there's a good summary for you. So what did I love about this game? All of it. I loved the story of this game so much. There was so much I loved about this story. And I just don't even know the best way to describe it. It was just so well done, and it was a very cinematic and very movie-like experience. Hideo Kojima is an amazing writer-director, and it really shows in this game. One thing I really loved about this game was all the characters. Pretty much every character you meet has something really weird and unique about them, but there's also a really cool story behind it, and I loved this. It made meeting each character very interesting, and hearing their story was sometimes really sad, and it really bums you out, but it really makes you appreciate the character as it really helps you get attached to him and really learn from the character. I loved how it gave each character time to shine. There was really no characters that I felt like didn't get their moment to shine, which I really appreciated because all these characters are really interesting and it was really cool to really delve into their stories and their characters. And the character you play as, Sam, portrayed by Norman Reedus, was really, really good. At first, he's kind of just this gruff lone wolf man and just really wants nothing to do with anything. But he changes and grows over the story, and I really loved his development. He's definitely not the same character he was at the beginning of the story. Even though he tries to act like it, he's definitely not. And you can see that change, and I loved it. It was a great character arc that was really interesting to follow all the way through. All this stuff is just really enhanced by the way that the story is paced and that the way that Hideo Kojima just really presents these stories. It's so well done, and it's just like the cinematography, the writing, the characters, the dialogue, everything is so well done. My favorite parts of this game were when there was cutscenes or story plots going on. It was just so interesting and unraveling the mystery of what's going on. It was just so amazing. There's so much to unveil and talk about, and I want to talk about it, but in lieu of spoilers, I will not. And so just this story was so well done. One thing that you really don't notice in a lot of video games is the camera work and the cinematography. And like I've said, the cinematography in this game is amazing. It does a great job of capturing moments of tensions and even sometimes moments of like claustrophobia. Like there's one scene when two characters are hiding in a shower and like the camera's in there, and I felt claustrophobic. It was a really tight scene, and you could see that in the actors' faces and things like that. And it was really interesting, and I loved just the way that the camera worked. It worked really, really well and really built upon these cinematic scenes in their own right, making you feel like you're watching like one of the best movies ever. It's just so well done, and I have nothing but praises for the story of this game, and it's so good, and that's why I highly encourage you to go check it out. Even if the gameplay looks so uninteresting, go and check out the story. There's so much here, and it's so worth it. Hideo Kojima said he was going to start making movies from his production company, and I cannot wait to see what they do. This game was a great blend of movie and gaming experiences, and so if you're a fan of movies and if you're fans of games, this melds everything that you love about those two things all into one, and it does such a great job, and it never really feels out of place. Hideo Kojima does what he does best in this game, and it's probably one of my favorite of his projects ever. I loved the world and the lore of Death Stranding. It does such a great job of like building up this mystery of like what is going on? What are all these things? How does this all work? And it does a great job of explaining it as the story goes along. You don't really figure out everything until kind of towards the end of the game, which I liked. It kept me guessing and it kept the mystery going the whole time. And while I was able to kind of piece some things together in my mind, and when it was confirmed from dialogue in the game, I felt like, oh yes, I was right, and that was awesome. And I love that dynamic of just the mystery. And there is light horror elements. I would definitely not say this game's a horror game by any means. There are some parts that I'm like, ooh, that's kind of spooky, but definitely not a horror game by any means, and that's just fine. Trying to find a good way to talk about this story without talking about any spoilers at all is very hard. But just know that I really loved the story of this game. I loved the actors and the portrayals and the writing, the dialogue and the story and the world and just everything, the cinematography. It all came together to make such an amazing thing. And like I said at the beginning, if the gameplay looks so uninteresting to you, this looks so boring, I highly recommend going out and trying to find someone who's cut this into a movie, because this is an amazing story that needs to be heard. And the theme is just, it's there and it's present, and I love that. And this is elevated by the gameplay, so let's talk about the gameplay. With some other reviews I've seen and other research I've done, a lot of people seem to kind of coin this game as a walking simulator, and I actually feel like that's the furthest thing from the truth, and I'm going to explain myself. So the gameplay mainly focuses on Sam as he journeys across the United States, in the meantime bringing all these cities into the chiral network, which is like the big Wi-Fi of the nation. It's really weird, but bringing in these cities in there and making deliveries and helping these people out in different ways. This does constitute in you walking long distances. And at the beginning of the game, you are doing a lot of walking, but it's not just you pushing the joystick in one direction and moving. There's so much more to it, and there's a lot of other factors going on that you have to take into consideration while you're going around the world. The same thing with the story. I'm going to kind of keep the gameplay pretty spoiler free. There's really not a whole lot of spoilers in the gameplay, but I'll just kind of give you a basic run through of how everything works. So to start out with, you are in like a delivery location or one of the main like hub areas, and you collect orders. You get orders from people, and they have you deliver specific packages to specific locations. And depending on the difficulty of the order and the type of package you have to deliver, you can get different rewards. Some can be pretty great and some can be pretty small. It just all really depends on the difficulty and the distance you have to travel to get to the destination. And this was really cool, as it really made you kind of have to pick and choose. Eventually you can go back and do all of them if you really so desire, but at certain points you kind of have to pick and choose what you want to do, because you can't take on every order all at once. Factors like having packages that have to be delivered in a specific amount of time, or you can have packages that can't be damaged, or ones that can't have water on them. Things like that really make you have to kind of consider which ones you have to pick and choose, and also give you some other factors you have to worry about when you're making these deliveries. Once you get all your orders and your packages, you have to really find a way to make your inventory really work, because you carry everything on Sam's body, and you can see it all on his back or attached to his body, and you have to find the best way to organize all this stuff and make your movement more efficient and make things easier for you as long down the line. But you also have to keep in mind that you need some resources to help you traverse more difficult areas of the map, but we'll talk more about that later. At first, this system of having to try to organize all your cargo and keeping things kind of intact, it was really confusing, but then they kind of introduced this like auto arrange cargo button, and I usually found that just to be just fine. I'd just pop in, auto arrange everything, and it worked just great, and I was on my way. And so at first it was a little intimidating, but kind of once you get the feel for the systems, it works really, really well. So after choosing your orders, getting your cargo and arranging it on your body, it's time to pick your destinations and how you want to get there. And I loved this section of this game. I loved looking at the map and trying to plot the best course. Well, in the meantime, I don't really know what's ahead of me. I don't know what factors are going to be in the way. This made this section really fun, because I would plan a way through a specific route, but then I'd run into a hard hazard that I wasn't prepared for, or something I wasn't expecting, and then I'd have to worry about that situation when I got to that point. It was a really fun dynamic of having to be like, oh, this looks like a great way, and it's like, wait, it's a little faster, so maybe there's a hazard or it's something in the way that I'm going to have to deal with to cut time on my travel going around a mountain or something. This made me really have to consider which types of resources I wanted to bring out with me. There's like ladders and climbing anchors and weapons of different types you can use for different enemies. We'll talk more about that later. But like having to try to decide which resources I wanted to bring and which ones I wanted to leave behind was a tough choice, because you never really knew exactly what you were going to need until you got to that spot. So you kind of always had to be prepared. And I liked this, as sometimes I would get to a certain spot and it's like, I really wish I had a climbing anchor. But then I didn't have one because I left it behind. And so you was like, oh, why didn't I grab one? And so it was just a fun dynamic of you just never really knew what to expect. So once you have all your resources collected, you have your route planned, you have your orders, now you're finally heading out. And yes, you are going to do a lot of walking, but like I said, there's so many other factors to worry about. And one of the biggest factors is the environment itself. While you're walking around, you have your cargo on your back, and depending on how much cargo you have can make your walking a little bit more tricky or a little bit easier. And you have to make sure you maintain your balance while watching the environment around you to find the most efficient and easier ways to get to your destinations. And this was not always easy. Using my scanner, I always had to scan the environment to find the best way to go from one place to another. And I liked this dynamic of I wasn't just walking, I was always engaged. I was always trying to find, I was like, oh, maybe if I go this way, or maybe if I scan over here, I can kind of see if this would be a better option. And then in the meantime, I'm also trying to keep my balance, things like that. So there is definitely a lot more going on than just walking. Yes, you are walking, but I wouldn't say it's a walking simulator because you have so many other factors going on that keep you distracted from just walking. Red Dead Redemption 2 is one of my favorite games of all time. It probably is my favorite game of all time. And that is a very slow game. The movement around the map is very slow. And I would say Death Stranding is even slower than Red Dead Redemption. But I love these slow games as it gives you time to just really think about the experience and think about the world around you and just the elements of the story. And since the story of Death Stranding is really engaging anyways, these spaces in between the story elements where I was making lots of deliveries were really great because I had time to think and be like, okay, what happened and what's happening going to happen next. It was a great way to just kind of keep the player thinking about what's going to happen next. And I loved it. It just let me kind of think. And it was really engaging, and I liked it because then I was also having to worry about all those other factors going on. So there's a lot more going on than just walking. But if you don't want to walk the whole time, at a certain point you do get vehicles. And these vehicles also have factors themselves to worry about. They only have a specific battery, or they can only go through specific terrains. And I really liked this dynamic as it didn't just okay, here's a vehicle, now you don't ever have to walk ever again. But also these vehicles were kind of daunting because you could find a truck that can carry lots of cargo. And so you'd be like, oh, cool, I'll just pack a whole bunch of cargo in there. And so you throw all this cargo in this truck, and then you're driving along, and all of a sudden you get to this huge mountain range. You're like, my truck's not going to make it through that. Then you're going to have to leave some of your cargo behind because you overpacked your truck. So you just got to make sure you really plan these things out. And I loved this dynamic as it just didn't let you rely on the vehicles. And so it was kind of a great way to kind of keep players away from just using the vehicles the whole time and just speeding from one destination to another, cutting out that time to letting you think about the story and letting you process the world. And this isn't all that this gameplay has to offer. There was one thing that I really loved about this game, and it was the theme about connection and building connections with the world around you. And this idea of connection is really hammered home with the online connection system. Now, to specify and really bring the point, you do not have to have a PlayStation Now account to access this feature. I don't have that. I'm just a basic PlayStation member, and I don't have online features, but the online features in this game worked. So that was really nice that I didn't lose that feature because I'm not paying the $20 a month for the PlayStation Now. So what is this feature I've been going on about for 2 seconds? It's the coolest thing ever. So the online connection system is when you're out in the world, you'll find other resources or hazard or environmental hazards, things like that, that players have also encountered, and they've left things behind to help you out. For example, I was climbing through this cliff area, and I was like, oh, I'm out of climbing anchors, but then I turned around to find that someone else had used the climbing anchor in that point and left it. And so now everyone else in that area could use it as well. And this was amazing because then it just was like, oh, thank you, other player. You saved me from having to go all the way back and collecting one of my other ropes, something like that. And so it was a really cool system in that way. At first, the world does seem pretty empty, but as you advance further along and you explore more, you'll find that more items and things pop up, and I liked this. It just really made me feel like I was making a difference in the world around me as I left things behind, and I would get a notification. It's like, oh, someone else took care of this, or someone else used this, and I liked that. I really felt like I was connecting the world and that I was helping other people. It was a really cool system, and this is also enhanced by the likes and dislikes. Well, there's not likes. They're not dislikes. There's likes, but not dislikes. And there's a like system to help encourage you to do the online connection system. And how this works, back to my climbing anchor example. So I found that climbing anchor and I was like, oh, it saved me. So I can leave that person a bunch of likes so they know that it really helped me out and I really liked it. Then they can be like, oh, cool, I helped someone else out. It was just such a cool dynamic that I loved having, just feeling like I was making a difference, that I was connecting this world. Like I said, the idea of this whole game is connection, and this really just brought it home. I mean, it's literally called the online connection system. What else makes connecting more than actually connecting? And so this system was just so great, and I highly encourage you to do everything you can to help other players out. I felt so helpful when I was in an area and I was like, oh, I should leave my ladder behind here so that someone else can use it, and then I'd leave some signs or other things going on to be like, hey, players, go this way. I left a ladder for you. And then I'd get a bunch of likes from it because I was helping people out. It was such a cool system that felt really rewarding morally. Well, the likes don't affect your game very much, if at all. It was just nice knowing you were helping people out. And you can also leave signs and things of like encouragement, like, hey, watch out, there's BTs in the area, or hey, you got this, dude, keep going, you're really close, or hey, go this way, it's an easier way to go this way. Things like that just really helped me feel like there was others in the world. Well, you never once run into another player, you'll never see online players running around and placing things. It really helped just make it so it didn't seem like it was an online function, but made me really appreciate it more because it was like, oh, cool, this is an online function, but I still feel like I'm connecting with people even though I'm not. It was a really cool dynamic that I really liked, and I loved this system a lot and really enhanced the gameplay. So, last gameplay element, combat. So there is a little bit of combat in Death Stranding. Well, I chose to avoid it most times because I just didn't want to put myself in those situations. I very rarely had the resources I needed to. There is a little bit of combat here and there that splashed throughout the game that does change up the pace if you're looking for something a little bit more action-packed. So the first bit of combat is with these guys called the Meewles, and they're pretty much just like cargo-obsessed assholes who just want to steal your cargo. They don't want to kill you, they just want to steal your cargo. So you can either defend yourself, or if you really want, you can really go out of your way and try to beat them up and steal their cargo. Well, stealing their cargo is really, really beneficial in the resource department. You get a lot of resources and a lot of great things. I chose to avoid this as it was just easier for me to kind of go around, but sometimes you couldn't avoid it. Sometimes their camps were in just a really bad spot, or they did a great job of tracking me down. While you do get weapons in this game, killing people is highly frowned upon, and actually I think it leads to very negative consequences. And so I chose to avoid killing people, and I would just use my non-lethal weapons, which actually worked really efficiently. Or there's a basic melee system that was pretty much just mashing X, which was fine, but it could have been a little bit more engaging. But like, I very rarely used it because I just found it easier for me to kind of just avoid these scenarios. But when I did have to get into these scenarios, they were always pretty exciting and pretty tense as I was trying to run away from these people, or if I was trying to get into their camp to steal a specific item of cargo. Beyond mules, there is other sections of combat and shooting, but I don't want to talk about those due to their spoiler-esque things going on. But the shooting in those sections is far more fast-paced than anything else in the game, and they are quite exciting and lots of fun. So I really enjoyed those. I wish I could talk about it more, but I don't want to say more because they are pretty spoiler-ish. And so, but just know that with the shooting, when you do have those shooting sections, the shooting mechanics are actually really, really well. And I thought it was fun, and it was a great change up of pace from the nice, slow, methodical gameplay to also some fast-paced shooting sections. So I've talked about BTs and how they're such a problem, but I haven't really talked about how they're a problem. Well, we're going to talk about how they're a problem, and they are stressful as hell. The BT sections in this game are so stressful. How it works is, as you're venturing across America, you're going to run through certain sections where BT fields are just a giant field and there's just BTs everywhere. And using your baby in a jar called a BB and your scanner, you have to make your way through these fields nice and stealthily to avoid getting caught by these BTs. If so, this can cause damage to your cargo and hinder your progress. And in the meantime, you also got to worry about the timefall that's coming down, damaging your cargo. So you got to try to find the most efficient way to get through these sections as quick as possible so you can keep your cargo intact, but also trying to avoid the BTs. And it's stressful. Well, at the beginning, you are completely defenseless to the BTs. Later on, you get access to weapons and other things that let you take care of them. But I love this dynamic because these weapons that you can use your health to destroy the BTs. So you kind of have a cool dynamic of like, oh, I could just take out these BTs. And it's like, yeah, but also you could die because you're using your health as ammo. I love this dynamic, and this even applies to some boss fights for BT boss fights later on in the game. As just your health is your ammo. I loved this dynamic, and it really kind of made me contemplate, like, is it going to be worth it to go through and clear out this field of BTs and make my job easier? Or is it going to be more beneficial for me to sneak on because I might need that health a little later? I loved this dynamic, and it was such a great way to just make these BT sections even more stressful. All these BT field factors go in together to make these sections super stressful, and it was super engaging and just lots of fun. They were quite scary, and I always tried to avoid them because they just really hindered my progress in trying to get to where I needed to go. But sometimes it's not possible to avoid them, and you just have to deal with the situation, and I liked it. So I loved the gameplay of Death Stranding. There was a lot that was really engaging for me. And while it is definitely not for everyone, it is very slow and very methodical, I personally really enjoyed it. I thought it was a great way to kind of get some different paces between the stories so you weren't just watching a movie. And I liked how the gameplay was engaging for me and just kept me engaged the whole time. I mean, I put like 50 hours into this game, and I loved every minute of it. It was so great, and I would love to hear more people appreciate this gameplay like I do. So if you liked it, let me know what you liked about it as well. So graphically and technically, there's really not a lot to say. Graphically, this game looks great. I didn't have any problems with the graphics at all. It looks really, really well. And like, I'll talk more about this later, but like the facial capture, the actors and stuff was so well done. And technically, I had no bugs, crashes, freezes, anything. Granted, I never really went out of my way to find any, but like if you were to probably go off the beaten path, you probably might find any. But like in the general gameplay and everything like that, I didn't have any problems at all. So great job, keep it up. The graphics look great, technically it runs great, everything's great. One of the things I loved most about this was the facial captures of the actors. I loved this dynamic as it really made you feel like you were watching a movie. Every little detail on their face is very apparent, little like subtle like things like that. You really catch it and you really get the feel for their character, and it just makes it seem a little bit more personal. And this is really enhanced by the performances of all these actors. I can't think of anyone that I was like, they're okay. No, everyone was so great. Norman Reedus was great. Margot Qualley, I think was her name, and Sayla Duh, things like that. They were so great. And Troy Baker, his character wasn't the best thing ever. I'll talk more about that in the spoilers, but Troy Baker does a really great job in it. It was one of my favorite of his performances. Just his character's kind of creepy and weird. But anyway, Troy Baker's awesome. I love Troy Baker, so I could go on about him all day. But just everyone does such a phenomenal job, and it really shows. There's one scene in particular that I can think of off the top of my head. Hardcore spoilers, so I'm not even going to talk about it very much. But the actor does a fantastic job, and I was into it. I was super like, it was an emotional scene, and the actor did such a great job. So kudos to all these guys. They did such a great job, and just the technology of this was so cool, and it just really brought me into the story, and it really got me engaged in these characters. This kind of leads into my next thing I want to talk about is the character design. I loved the character design in this game. Each character was so unique in their own way. Everyone had something that stood out about them, and I loved it. And you could just see like on their body and like their character design. That was something that was so cool. And Troy Baker's character, I loved his design. His design was so cool and so creepy. Like, I want that mask now. Like, that was cool. And so just so many great things that I loved, and I just wanted to watch these characters all the time just because they looked really cool and they're portrayed really well, and just everything worked so great about these characters, and I loved it. They were so enthralling and so encapsulating with the performances, and they just look so cool. I want statues of every single character because they all look so awesome. Okay, so I'm doing everything I can to rack my brain, and I can't think of anything else that I want to talk about here that isn't a spoiler. I've gone through a lot of information, so hopefully this helped you guys kind of form more of an opinion about this game, and hopefully it can either help you to decide to get it or not get it. And if you're going to not get it, check out the story. Please, I highly encourage you to check out the story. At least do that much. It is such a phenomenal story. There is so much well done with the characters and the world and just the story itself and the lore that this game builds. So phenomenal. And the gameplay, well, not for everyone. It was very slow, methodical, and had a lot to think about and kept me engaged the whole time. I loved the gameplay of this as it was a great segue between story sections. The actor portrayals and the facial capture and the character designs, it all just was so good. Hideo Kojima is a master. I spent like 50 hours in this game in like a week, and it was the best 50 hours of that week. It was so great. And I almost want to just start this game right back up and do it again because it was just so phenomenal. I just love the story. I love the game. I want to see more from Hideo Kojima. I'll wait freaking 10 years for his next project if it's something like this. It's just so well done, and he is a master at what he does. And it's just a phenomenal writer, director, and the game itself is so fun. And so far, this is my game of the year. It just kept me in the whole time, and I was so into it, and it was all I could think about. It just like had me hooked. And so I really want everyone to try this experience for themselves. And if it's not for you, that's fine. It doesn't make you a bad person and doesn't make you less than anyone else. You just don't like this kind of game. But I think you will like this story. If you like this, if anything even catches your interest at all about anything in this game, check out the story at the least. It would do you a favor. You would be experiencing one of the greatest stories that I've ever experienced in gaming and just in general. I just loved the way that this game presented itself, and it was so well done. So Hideo Kojima, domo arigato. Please make more stuff. This is amazing. I love this game so much. And yes, it is slow. So if you like slower games, if you like Hideo Kojima and his work, I highly recommend Death Stranding, and I would highly recommend you check it out. So that's my review for Death Stranding. I hope you like this game as much as I did. I want to hear about it. What did you think about Death Stranding? Let me know down below. And while you're there, if you want to hit like, subscribe, and the bell to get notified every time I post a new video, that would be awesome. Thank you guys so much for watching. I really do appreciate it. We've got some good stuff coming up eventually, maybe. So just keep watching, subscribe. That would be awesome. I would really appreciate that. And check me out over on Twitch. I'm streaming there pretty constantly. So if you like what you see here and you want to check out more of my stuff, please check it out. I would love that. So thank you so much for watching. I hope you liked Death Stranding as much as I did. And if you played the game or you just don't care about spoilers, I got a spoiler chat video coming up later on. So keep an eye out for that and join me for that. So thanks as always for watching. We'll catch you guys next time on A Game for Your Thoughts.